Okay, so I'd like to welcome everybody to our next episode of the Low Ball Show. Today I've got someone who's went from a PE teacher to Hibs record breaker with 296 appearances for Leicester Road Club. He remains the only Hibs keeper to have kept a clean sheet in a Scottish Cup final twice, starting his senior career with Cowdenbeath. Our guest today has also had spells with Meadowbank Thistle, Greenock Morton and Wraith Rovers. So it's my pleasure to welcome along today Jim McArthur. Jim, how are you doing? Thanks for joining us today.
No problem, John. I'm doing well. I'm just keeping an eye on the friendly scores. One or two of my clients are in action, so I'm watching the scores on flash scores.
Well, that's right. You've got now. You do. Is it an agency you've got?
Yeah. I've been an agent for 30 years. I wanted to be a coach. That was what I wanted to be. I wanted to be a manager, a coach. When I went in, when I finished with football, and I started to do that, but I got invited to be an agent by someone, and it took over because you couldn't coach your own team and go and watch your own clients in the agent side. So I go and watch my clients playing and mentor them a wee bit because I was into the coaching.
Yeah. And how do you find that kind of transitioning from being a player to now doing that?
Well, the thing is, as well as that, what happened was, well, I was at college, being a teacher, I trained to be a teacher. But what happened was, when I became an agent, I also became an IFA at the same time because the players were complaining that weren't getting good advice, from banks, etc., on mortgages and any other thing. So I then did the dual thing. I became an IFA and an agent, so it was business and business. And the thing about being an agent, I mean, there was only Bill McMurdo, and agents were not accepted in the game very well. But being a former player, I got a bit more acceptance, than some.
So was that probably the kind of having your foot in the door with having been there and having met these people before? Do you feel it got your foot in the door a bit easier than outsiders coming in?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, you're not an agent without clients, so getting clients very easy. In the old days, when you went to the Scottish national team, when I started in 1989, 90, when you went to the national team, very few had an agent. And and they wanted an agent, and you picked them up. Now, I mean, 258 maybe, they go right down to 16-year-old, because they're not allowed to go below that, picking up players. So it's very hard to come by players. So you've got to get word of mouth. You've played, you've had referrals from players that have played and guys you've managed, but. I mean, I've managed the coaches, the managers' sons. So it's been a long time, and I love it. I love it. It's a hobby work, because I love football.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, when you're kind of doing the agent work, I know you're saying obviously tonight you're sitting kind of keeping an eye on the scores for your clients. I mean, is that kind of consistent? Do you go a lot and watch them play with the clubs they're playing with just now? So you don't kind of, now where some people stop, they'll do the deal and they'll give the advice, and then after that they'll just kind of move on and go to the next person. So do you kind of very much take a complete interest in following?
Yeah, customer care and mentoring, and the players love you to take an interest in what they're doing, how they played. If they're not playing, when they come on as sub, how they did, etc., etc. So, and I've been in that position, of course, not so much as a sub because there were no subs in my day. There was just the goalie and that's it. So, but no, they like that. They like you keeping in touch and taking an interest in their game, and so that's why I said I couldn't really go into management when I wanted to at the time because I had to go and see the boys playing. Well, that's what I did. I went to see the boys playing and met them and discussed it and mentored them a wee bit. Still do. I love that bit. I love that side of it.
One of the things that I thought was, I was kind of really interested in was funny you mentioned there, back in kind of your day and not having subs at that time. I mean, it's been a massive transition from the kind of goings on to back then to how kind of football is viewed and dealt with now. I mean, how, when you were back, in your kind of Hibs career, because you were the longest serving Hibs goalkeeper.
I didn't realise that a short while ago, and I've been the most years of a goalie at the club, and also I've played the most games of any goalie the Hibs have ever had. So I've got some claim to fame. Some might say I've been there too long, and they were trying to get rid of me all the time I was there. There's a lot of trialists come and gone, but no, I didn't know that, and I quite like it. Who wouldn't?
Well, exactly. And I mean, with Hibs, I mean, you had a kind of really strong career with Hibs, with cup finals. I believe you played in Europe as well, and kind of against some of the bigs in Europe. I mean, what was that like to play in the kind of big games back then?
The things on that, when I was growing up, I didn't want to be a keeper. And you could go into that if you want to. I always wanted to be a striker, and I played and I scored goals and a freak. I mean, I played one game and I got picked up, and then eventually you get, say, you go to Cow and you do well, and then you get picked up by Hibs. And I mean, I wanted to play for Dunfermline because I'm a Dunfermline boy. I used to go and see the Pars or New Jockstein. I used to go and see them training in Crossgates at the Humber Park. Fell in love with the Pars and still love the Pars, but I trade it in. Hibs were just a team. Finals, we're playing Labour Cup final, and against Liverpool, we played against Man United, we played against Leicester, against Juventus, Rosenborg, before it became the team they are. And I mean, Hibs were just a fantastic team. They were unlucky because we did okay against Rangers. We were unlucky because Celtic had a very, very, very good team.
Yeah.
That was 9 in a row. Yeah. That was a 9 in a row. Jockstein and all the rest of it. It was amazing team they had. And I think we split our team up too quickly. They split their team up, and so did we. That was the problem, and then they won it again.
And I mean, now when you see, a lot of kind of football players and clubs, when they'll bring in the likes of, like nutritionists, dietary specialists, and you get all this. I mean, how did that compare to back then?
The thing is, we had Eddie Turnbull, and Eddie Turnbull, everybody knows, was a hard taskmaster, but he was a fantastic coach. I mean, Craig Brown, God rest his soul, great lad, Craig, Walter Smith, Jim McLean, Fergie, they all looked up to Eddie. So we had Eddie, and I mean, tactically wise, it was great. And the thing is, we trained very, very hard, but it wasn't, like you're saying, it wasn't scientific. I mean, nowadays it's incredible. The fitness of the guys and the speed of the game. I mean, you'll know yourself, John, that when boys come up here from England, they think this is going to be a cakewalk. Yeah. They just can't keep up with the pace up here. The pace is frightening up here. And it's down to, the way they train, the rest periods they get, the scientific, background, how they do the bleep test and they study it and recovery, and also, as you say, what they eat and the way they eat. We were told what to eat and to stay away from things, but the thing was, people, we were fit. Eddie, my God, he trained you. We were fit. You laugh about the Gullen. We went to the Gullen sands as well, and they run you up and down the hills till you were, basically the judge was till you were sick.
Yeah.
But, no, it was yes. I watched that as well, and I talked to the guys about sports science, and I talked to them, and I talked to young players that I've got in my books about the sports science and the training, and the weight training, and going back to the gym and that. It's amazing. And I mean, they've all got not all, but mainly they've got the academies. Fantastic, brilliant. They want for nothing. So when our day was, we had to get a minibus and search for a pitch.
Yeah.
A club the size of Hibs, school grounds, up and down Arthur's Street. It's all changed that way, but the football back then and the team, I mean, it was it was myself or Jim Herriott, Brownlee, Shadler, Stanton, Blackley, Edwards, O'Rourke, Gordon, Cropley, Duncan. To watch them from where I was in the goal, fantastic. Absolutely fantastic football.
And with you, and it's interesting as well, you say about kind of like down south and the players that kind of come up here and think that they're going to kind of breeze it, and then very quickly they realise it's such a hard game, it's faster paced than anybody kind of thought of. Did you feel like kind of, now when you look at it, when you're watching games and you're viewing stuff from the point of like an agent and a kind of advisor to these people, compared to when you played, do you feel that it was a lot tougher and harder back then? And the kind of rules and stuff have softened it.
I'm one of these guys that hates going back and our day this and our day that. Just the comparison is difficult to compare.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of quality. There was a lot of quality, and I'm not slagging the guys now. There is quality, but there's more emphasis on athleticism, pace, and of course from behind the slide tackle. Slide tackle was fantastic. I mean, John Blackley, guys like that, John Craig, it was an art form to do it right. A lot of that's gone from the game, and we've got blooming four G pitches, and the ball bounces really high. It's strange, and there's not a lot of slide tackling. Obviously, there is some because it's a good surface.
Yeah.
But back then, it was more physical. I would say it's more physical.
With you obviously talking about the kind of setup that a lot of the clubs have now, with the kind of academies and stuff, and it's interesting you kind of mention that. So recently, I went along to Hamilton, got to kind of see the setups there, and I always think it's very surprising because, I remember kind of going to Hamilton years ago, for example, and there was kind of nothing behind the goals, and there was nothing there. Now they've got a gym and things back there. They've got that kind of set up. And what you're doing now, how do you feel the kind of standard of what boys have got to come through in kind of compares throughout? Because obviously people would look at the SPL, for example, and they would automatically assume, your kind of top clubs there are going to have kind of top end facilities. Hamilton now being a League One club, I was really shocked at the facilities that they've got and that they've got at their kind of disposal. Do you find that that's kind of quite throughout, that a lot of people don't realise what clubs have got up here?
They're a really, really, really good club to talk about, because if you look at, I think it was under 18s and under 16s, perhaps. Well, two of the age levels, they won the league, and they've got very, very good academy and a lot of good players coming through. Obviously they struggled and went down, but they did very, very well. And with the youth and the academy set up. But of course the thing is, the academies, they do very, very well. And I'm not saying this about Hamilton, because they do well bringing the boys into the first team. It's getting them into the first team and playing with men is quite hard. And this is why people wanted the B League. And when we played there, we go back in our day again. When we played, everybody knows that there was a reserve game. So if you were playing, if Hibs were playing at home, the reserves played away to whoever it was they were playing. So if Hibs were playing Rangers, they would go away and play a reserve game at the same time of day at their pitch. And so the guys that were just out of the first team, or the younger guys, got a game with hardened pros. And so you were toughened, you're toughened up.
Yeah.
The young boys do very, very well. No, listen, there's a lot of good young boys, and it's just when they go on loan, or when they're meeting the bigger men and the stronger men, it's difficult for them. And some sink, some swim, but of course that's what happens.
Yeah,
that's what happens. But we'd have got that real early, because we had the facilities, we had the reserve games, and of course clubs have been trying to moot that, or B games, or they're trying to get back to it, because there was a spell there, John, when the young boys weren't getting a game at all. After COVID, of course, that caused a lot. But they weren't getting a game at all. Some boys would go through a season with 6 games, and that's just no progression. That's not helping the success rate of boys coming through at the first team.
Yeah, and it's something that I kind of mentioned quite a bit as well. If you think back to kind of years ago, if you were like a Rangers or a Celtic, for example, but if you were in the SPL, you would have to play with homegrown players. You know, there would have to be a certain amount of them in your team, there would have to be a certain amount of under 21s.
Yep.
That I mean, you look at the likes of, you know, like your Callum McGregors, your James Forrest, you know,
Yep.
I think the likes of Chris Burke and stuff at Rangers, they all kind of come through. I felt having that kind of valued it. Do you feel like kind of taking that away now has probably hindered a lot of progression?
Well, yes, of course. You mean the lads coming in from abroad?
Yeah, so I was having the kind of lads coming in from abroad as opposed to having that rule where you had to have so many homegrown players
Yeah,
and so many other
yeah,
21s
yeah,
in. Do
yeah.
you find in your experience now, do you still see that as a kind of hindrance to stop
Well,
boys
yes.
from
If you
progressing?
if you look at a Rangers Celtic game, there's not many homegrown Scots, you know, because they need to beat each other. They need to win the league, and they need ready-made, you know. So rather than take a chance on a younger boy, they're bringing ready-made from abroad, you know, internationalists,
Yeah,
and you can understand them doing it. But of course, there's no there's rules now, obviously, about Brexit and about bringing boys in from abroad. It's a point system. But remember when they brought in it's like when you go to Australia, there's a 4 foreigners rule, and we had a rule where you only can only so many players, and it worked for a bit. But yes, agreed. But you've also got to have the quality as well. You know, you've
yeah,
got to have the quality and the players coming through, and you know, there's a lot of competition for young guys now when they're playing football or rugby, or you know, there's stuff outside the game. You know, computers and mainly they're on the computer, social media, and we're looking at other things. We just had the football. You know, when the football went out and played football, as you know, morning, noon, and night. They couldn't get us in the house, and
aye.
that means that you have more than 10,000 touches, you hundreds of thousands of touches, and you could control it all. You know, yeah, but and this is what they're getting back to in the academies. You get a lot of the ball and a lot, you know, it helps the skill.
And with you looking back at, because I do kind of want to touch on as well, when you had played, you know, because you'd done a lot during your career and during when you were with Hibs and you played, you know, alongside some great players. I was still, yeah, laughing, but also couldn't believe it that you had 2 clean sheets in a Scottish Cup final and still wound up in
Yeah,
the losing team.
it's amazing, isn't it? Well, nobody's had one shutout in a Scottish Cup final. Hibs goalie, just me,
Yeah,
because even the teams that won lost goals, as you know.
yeah,
But you know, but I thought we should have won the first game. We should have had a penalty, but there you go. We didn't get a penalty in the second game. But they were after extra time as well. You know, so there was even more minutes. So you know, it was 2 games after extra time into the replay after extra time, third one after extra time, and then Arthur Duncan scored an own goal. You know, so it was
yeah,
amazing. And of course, latterly, of course, Hibs won it after all these years.
yeah.
But no, it was amazing. Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's a good thing to look back and say, oh, I did that, and oh yeah, what a kudo. But I never won the league. I never won. I was there to lose. I was there. It was 6-5. We won the cup. But hey ho.
I mean, the one thing I'll say is it's still a great kind of record to hold for Hibs. Obviously, you would rather have that winners' medal round you, but you know, looking at what happened, I mean, that will never be beat because of the way, especially now that the finals kind of play to a finish. You'll never have it again
Yeah,
where it was replayed like
yeah,
that, and
yeah.
somebody's ever going to achieve that again.
No, that's true. That's true.
When you look at, say, players that you played with, was there any kind of characters that you would have said kind of stood out that you played with, where a lot of people kind of look towards?
Well, the thing is, if you look at the 10 in front of me, you know, everyone had character. You know, that was the whole thing. The dressing room was fabulous. You know, it was a great team spirit, great bunch of boys, and the skill was amazing. The boys that weren't capped, you know, the boys that were capped speaks for itself, but the boys that weren't capped were great players in their own right. I mean, I could go through the whole team, but Pat Stanton stood out as well because he was the captain and he was so fit and led by example. But if you say to one or two of the boys that, you know, the John Blackleys and John Brownleys that were capped, they say that Alec Edwards was one of the best players in the team. And he was a great character because,
Yeah.
you know, he sent off now and again and got himself into a bit of bother, but great player, great passer of the ball. Great. You know, he used to pass the ball crossfield past the Arthur Duncan. And Arthur had the pace, he would run onto it, you know. But, you know, when these boys played, they were so good. But people used to say to me after the game, oh, that's unbelievable with the intelligence and, you know, the way you guys play. But we actually went out and trained to be where we were in the positions we were. We did shadow play, you know, shadow training, and we trained through it. And, you know, it didn't come by accident. Yes, there was a lot of skill, and yes, there was a lot of improvisation, but we trained it.
Yeah, and it's funny too, because you know when I kind of researched and looked up a lot as well, one of the things that continually cropped up in many kind of forums and many blogs and many people talking about was back then a lot of goalkeepers were route one punting it out, but your name was continually brought up for throwing the ball and starting attacks.
Yeah. Well, this is me. This is the frustrated outfield player, you see, because, you know, I love to be able to play and get involved in the game, so I love to start it from the back. Hamish McAlpine was another one. Hamish did a lot of throwing the ball and starting the attack, you know. And there was one game somebody told me, I couldn't verify it, that, you know, I went through 3 games without kicking a long ball, and even the goal kicks were going short, you know, because the boys were so good at taking the ball. So I was playing them short or throwing a long ball. It's amazing stat.
Yeah,
it's true, but you know, you would think so, because I did throw it out. You know, I mean, but those days you were throwing it to the halfway line and keeping possession. You know, you weren't just kicking a long ball and it was a 50-50. And I mean, the boys do it now. They kick a long ball and it's 50-50, and they get the second ball. But they're starting at the back, but they're a bit overdoing the starting at the back bit now. You know,
yeah. Well,
teams are pressing up, and the goalies are getting caught. And I don't know about that so much.
You know, that's it. Now, when I watch it and I see a lot of teams starting from the back, I feel like heart and mouth probably 85% of the time, because now everybody's got wise to doing that.
Sorry if your man's City in Liverpool.
Aye.
Just no disrespect to the wee boys down the park, and the coach is getting them to take the ball from the back, and by the time they get 30 yards, they've lost the ball.
And when you look at, and again, just going to bring on from what you do now, and when you look at, you know, mentoring and kind of helping as well, a lot of these boys that you're kind of advising and things, is there much that you pull on from when you played and experiences that you had, or do you feel that that's very much you've had to adapt a lot of that now?
Well, no, it's from the experiences. Yeah, it's from the experiences. I mean, I played a long time. I started when I was 15 at Cowdenbeath and played till I was 33. You know, I was so young for a goalie. And then, believe it or not, John, I got fed up when I went back to teaching for a little bit, and I played rugby for 10 years with the Kirkcaldy Rugby Club. And that was great fun, because you weren't stuck back in a goal. You could run about and play and go over the pitch, which is more my style.
And I did see that, obviously, with the kind of playing rugby and stuff, and it was something I was going to touch on. Was rugby always something that you wanted to do? So even when you played football and you were making a career out of playing football, and I mean, you had over 100 clean sheets playing with Hibs. So obviously very successful in doing that. But away from that, did you always kind of think rugby's something that I want to do, that I want to go and play? Do you feel that being the reason?
The thing is, what happened was, from where I was from, Hallbeath, you went to, there wasn't many went to Dunfermline High School. I passed my quali. God, I don't know how I did that, but, and I became a high school bum. You know, there was none of us, our lot went to the Dunfermline High School, and that was cricket and rugby, you know?
Yeah.
So I loved cricket. Cricket, believe it or not, I love cricket, and I love rugby, and I've always loved it. But by the time I was 15, 16, Cowdenbeath told me I had to choose between rugby and football. And it was a terrible decision, because it was a goalie. It wasn't an outfield player, or, you know, out standoff or whatever I was playing at rugby at the time. And there was no money to be made at rugby then. It was amateur. Now it's great. There's a lot of money to be made. They're professional. So I had to go down that route. And I played for Cowdenbeath, and I told the teacher I couldn't play rugby, and he was really upset. But when I took college, I played rugby on the Wednesday, but I was still playing for Hibs. And there was one day we were training, and I wanted to hard tackle my friend, and I tackled him, and he put his knee down and broke my arm. So I trained part-time at Hibs at the time, because I was wanting my degree. And when I went into training at Hibs, I had to, well, not fake this injury, but I had to go in and fall awkwardly and break my arm because he'd broken a bone in it. It was stupid.
Yeah.
But I was playing rugby, and then, of course, I was playing cricket as well on Wednesday afternoons in the Meadows in Edinburgh for a team called Maccabee, a team that were made up of Jews, but they couldn't get enough to play, so they got us, and we played, and obviously I was a wicket keeper. That goes without saying.
Yeah.
And I loved that as well. So because I'd been brought up with these things, I always wanted to play them. And then the rugby, I loved it after the game, and I wanted to be the coach, and I coached goalkeepers at St Mirren, Dunfermline and Hamilton. There you go. Coached goalies at Hamilton, and I was enjoying it. I mean, I couldn't say I wasn't enjoying it. I was enjoying it, but I wanted to be an outfield coach. There's not many goalies coach the outfield players, but it just never happened. And then I went to Kelty as a manager, and it was when I was at Kelty as a manager that I went to be an agent, and that's when I had to stop. The progression was there. I could see that I could maybe move into coaching, so couldn't be.
And obviously, I know what you do now is fantastic, and everything that I'd kind of looked up in it, because you've done this for a long time, and I'd kind of seen that you've worked with a lot of kind of players that have played within the SPL and stuff as well throughout the years.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Do you find
that's some fantastic? Sorry, go on.
Sorry, I was going to say, do you find there being a big kind of difference when you're getting in with the boys in the SPL and moving down the leagues?
As I said to you, I mean, I had like Andy Gorham, Keith Wright, Chris McCart, all these boys, going back, Paul Ritchie, Colin Cameron, Davy Weir, Gary Naismith, and of course a lot of these boys went to England. But also you had the younger ones, because you have younger ones become mid-20s, they come their 30s, and then you've got the younger ones coming up again. So you keep the wheel going.
Yeah.
You keep the progression of young players moving up and progressing. And of course, the boys like, Chris Jameson and all these guys that moved on, and Colin Cameron, I was still their IFA. So I didn't lose touch with them. I was still looking after them in the financial services. So you had them all that time. I mean, 30 years, like I said.
Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah. And some of course became managers, and I mean, Ian Murray's a client of mine, and he's at Race Rovers, and so you have they all move on, and eventually you're managing them as managers, and so you look after them a lot longer.
And how did you find? Because obviously you're saying when you were at Kelty, and what you had wanted, you could see the kind of light on doing the kind of coaching side of it. You could see all that, something that you'd wanted.
Yeah.
But then obviously you had that kind of transition into, you couldn't be an agent and do that. Was there?
That's right.
Was that a kind of crossroads for you then as to what path you took?
Yeah, it's like, I mean, you've got to earn, John.
Yeah.
You could be at Kelty and maybe our teacher or whoever, but you're not making enough money to feed the family. You've got to go, and as an agent and an IFA, I was making money. So, it's down to that. If you couldn't afford to do it, it wasn't quite not afford to do it, but if I'd got in at maybe a higher level, I probably might have stuck. If I was earning money. I mean, I used to have Jim Leishman got the job at Dunfermline. I'm Dunfermline daft, Leash said to me when I was leaving Hibs at 32, "I'll get a reserve game for you, Jim, and you'll get a Dunfermline strip on." Well, still waiting. 71. That's Jim for you. He had the Dunfermline strip on. But no, I say that, in jest as well. I still go to Dunfermline games. I'm a member of the Dunfermline Trust, as a founder member. But I mean, Hibs, you can't be 11 years at Hibs. I mean, I love Hibs. I mean, that's my team as well. You know, it was fabulous. And I mean, they were a better team than Dunfermline. You know, Dunfermline were good in the 60s. When I went as a wee boy to see them win the cup in 68 and was it cup final in 65 when they lost to Celtic. Bertie Auld scored 2 and Bertie became my manager. And then the thing about that, the Hibs thing in Dunfermline, Alec Edwards and Roy Barry and Jim Herriot were at Hibs.
Yeah.
And they were my heroes. They were my gods. I mean, you never lose that. I still talk to Alec Edwards and Roy Barry as if I'm in awe of them. You probably are. You know, you put them on a pedestal and they stay there for life.
Yeah, exactly.
I was in the and even though I was in the dressing room with them, it was just amazing.
And is there any kind of specific person? Because also you've done a lot in your career, and you mentioned a lot of these kind of great names and the pedestals. Was there anybody throughout your time that, whether it be one or a couple of people that you would pick out that maybe had that kind of biggest impact or influence?
Although I said that Eddie Turnbull, you know, Eddie wasn't great with people, you know, he kind of ruled you. And but coaching wise, I mean, that's why I should have become a coach. I learned so much from Eddie, you know. He was absolutely fantastic. I told you the other coaches that I mentioned to you, they all looked up to him and learned from Eddie. And he spawned a lot of coaches, Eddie, as did others. And no, I thought he was the biggest influence, you know. And there's a boy called Bill McTavish at Cowdenbeath. He was a good influence as well. He brought me in as a goalie and I said, "You're going to be a goalie, blah, blah, blah." And that was it. But he trained me hard. He was a great guy. They were big influences.
And just as a very kind of quick touch point on it, because when I was looking up, am I right to look at the dates and look at the years and say that you were still with Hibs when George Best came in?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes, absolutely. What a nice guy. I mean, John, honestly, I mean, just me and him could go for a pint or a coffee. Honest, just a great, down to earth guy. Tell you a couple of stories. He wouldn't push them on you. Great guy. Absolutely. But the problem was that when he came to Hibs, he was in the way in his career. And if he played a five-a-side, he was just incredible on the small pitch. But when he went to the big pitch, no disrespect him, you know, he didn't have the legs.
Yeah.
But I mean, you still showed some quality in the goal he scored against Celtic, and the crowds, people turned out to see him, and he just had an aura about him. I mean, he was a great guy. Great. The boys will tell you, nobody's got a bad word in the dressing room about George. He was a great lad. Brilliant.
So, I mean, was he, obviously with him coming in, because of where he'd been in his career as well, and when you're saying about the stadiums packed out, did you feel then that there was a lot kind of more eyes kind of further afield on Hibs at that time because of that?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Again, we would play and there would be more crowd there and they would get more publicity for the town, you know, because George was there. I mean, it was a good thing for Hibs. I mean, Eddie Turnbull didn't want him.
Oh, really?
Tom Hart brought him in. Tom Hart brought him in and Eddie didn't want him. No, and that was the start of the fallout and Eddie leaving the club, I think. This is my personal opinion.
Yeah.
And of course, because Eddie likes his players, I told you, to be athletic, fit, get around the pitch. And that's not George. You know, George would sit and he could in the old days, you know, when he was at he left Man United when he was 26. Of course he was athletic. Of course he would do the back tracking, of course. But no. And of course George, all of these stories about him off the pitch and the drinking and turning up late for training, and that was all true. Of course it was. but he was so nice, honestly.
And I suppose as well, what you're saying about the wee things that were true, but he was obviously, there was an aura about him. I suppose, was it a case of sometimes your name got you in the team sheet?
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. You know, Eddie probably wouldn't want to pick him as well. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we had gone through the League Cup and hadn't lost a goal when we went to Celtic, and Bobby Lennox scored a hat-trick. And George was playing midfield against them, you know. Lennox was lightning, you know. And so it just shows you. But I would never say much bad about him, you know. I'm just saying he's obviously was older.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of well known as well when you look at it.
Well,
Yeah, great, skillful player, but I think kind of everyone can understand that when he came to Hibs, it was very much the latter end of
yeah,
of his kind of career, and but again, as you say, great for Hibs with the kind of publicity and things to come in, great for the
absolutely.
town. There,
I'm glad I met him, John. It was a pleasure to meet him. Oh,
yeah.
absolutely.
So just and this is just kind of the wee final bit that I kind of like to do, and especially you saying that you kind of watch. So I'm not saying that you've got any allegiances anywhere other than the Pars, but if you had to pick a team to watch or a team that you think would win the Championship, League One and League Two, who would you kind of pick out?
Championship, League One and League Two.
Yeah.
Championship, well, better not say Dunfermline, because Ian Murray's the manager of the race. But hey, listen, it's going to be some league because you've got these two are in it. You've got Dundee United and the other ones, Queen's Park and Morton and Inverness Carly. What a league it's going to be, you know?
Yeah.
Unbelievable. And first division, again, you've got Falkirk, John McGlynn, really good coach, and Paul Smith there. I mean, obviously full time. So I see they're recruiting well, and you would like to think they could come up as well because of full time. And obviously I want the 5 teams to do well. If Race Rovers and Dunfermline went up, that'd be great. One could win the league and one could go up in the playoffs. And if East Fife went up, that'd be great as well. Because with 4 teams in Fife, well, obviously Cowdenbeath are down in Lowland now. But and that's my ex-team. But it'd be great if the 5 teams came up.
And it's just funny as well, just to kind of quickly touch on, because you mentioned about Cowdenbeath and being down at the Lowlands. So I stay very near Albion Rovers football ground.
Yep.
So I take quite a bit of an interest in Rovers. To just give you an example, if there's a goal scored or there's an announcement made, I'm that close to it, I can hear it.
Yep.
In fact, I could message you and send you a few penalties that I've been able to watch from my window, which is how close I stay to it. But it was the kind of upset within the club, and I use them as the example because it's kind of just happened. If you look at the season, but about going down to the Lowland League and the expectation that they've kind of set in coming back up. I feel that that's probably a far more competitive league than a lot of people give credit, because just as you mentioned Cowdenbeath, because I think a lot thought when Cowdenbeath went down, they'd be very quickly back up again.
I'm not so sure they did, John, because if you think about it, I mean, you studied Albion Rovers, but if you think about East Stirling, Berwick, Brechin, they're actually staying out of the league a bit longer now because the boys like Spartans, Kelty, they're all trying hard and putting money in. I'm not saying that other teams aren't, but they're maybe putting a bit more in and having the right goal. And as you know, back to the older days, the bottom of the league, you got re-elected. You could be bottom of the league with 10 points and you got re-elected, so you didn't go down. And this is obviously a good system.
Yeah.
The pyramid system, so that teams will put money in and they'll have a goal for it. And so, yeah, Albion Rovers, they might look at it and think, oh my goodness, these teams go down, they don't bounce back up right away. Because there's other teams, there's East Kilbride, and there's other teams trying, and Spartans beating Brechin,
Yeah, and amazing. I mean, I've been over to the Spartans and seen a game and seen the setup and that there. And I again was kind of taken aback by the setup that they had, because at that point they were in the Lowland.
Yeah.
So they weren't guaranteed to come up or anything else. But it was just the sheer setup that they had there. I genuinely looked at it and thought, this is better than setups of some teams in the kind of lower leagues, and was really shocked that they were where they were in the Lowlands because of the setup. And I think there's a lot of investment in youth there and stuff.
Yes, absolutely. And so it's no surprise. I mean, when you go and see it, you're maybe surprised, and then you go and see it, and you think, well, it's no surprise.
Yeah,
And they've got money. They have a couple of big dinners, or maybe just the one where they make a few bob, and they've got people that with Edinburgh University, like in the old days, and the lawyers and accountants, and they all go to that, and it's well funded and it's well run. They've got a good manager. Doogie's a good manager, and no, it's a good setup.
and then just I suppose kind of round it off, and I really appreciate you taking the time with us today, Jim. If I could just a couple of very quick answer questions, just to get a wee bit of insight. So, the best stadium you ever played at, in your eyes, the best stadium, your best stadium away from home, obviously.
You mean stadium-wise, or the crowd as well, the whole setup?
Yeah, just a kind of mix of both. One that you'd look back on and say, do you know what, I remember that.
Yeah, that was Liverpool, the Kop. Playing in front of the Kop was amazing, because in those days, the fans they were all just standing, and it was amazing. It was just, they're all pushed in together. I mean, we were unlucky. 1-0 up here, missed the penalty. We lost 3-1 down there in the last minute goal. We've been through and beaten Liverpool, but fabulous crowd and the singing and just everything. In those days, the fans, I don't know if they do it now as much. They used to applaud the opposing goalie into his goal, and that's because they're going to knock a few by you, I suppose. But no, there's some great stadiums I've played in, but that was incredible. Apart from Easter Road used to have 40,000, like Hearts games, Celtic games, Rangers games, Leeds games, Liverpool games, 40,000 they had, because they had the high bank, and they took the high bank away, and it was amazing.
If you, and then I suppose just to kind of quickly and finally touch on, when you talk about back then and having that kind of 40,000, especially in those type of games, I mean, what was that like, especially in the kind of derby days? But you're one of the people that kind of felt the crowd round about you, and you could hear it, and it kind of zoned in, or did you more zone out?
It's a funny thing, because it's both, isn't it? Because when you've got the bigger crowd, it lifts you. You hear the crowd, and they're kind of going off. It goes towards the goal, and it kind of lifts you a bit and makes you aware, and it does affect you that way. You don't hear the individual shouts when it's a bigger game like that, but it does. It doesn't. You're focused, so you are focused. You don't notice the crowd. You just hear the din in the background, and that lifts you. And the adrenaline, of course, that it causes lifts you. It's fabulous. I mean, you haven't asked me, but one of the games that we played was at Hampden again in the Driver Cup, and we won 1-0. So that was fabulous. That was just to actually win at Hampden, because I lost a few times there. And to beat them in a pre-season tournament, and Alan Gordon scored in the last minute, that was fantastic.
I know there's been kind of plenty, and I know we've kind of touched on probably just some of them today, but if I had to just kind of ask for kind of favourite, or one of the kind of favourite moments or memories in football, is there anything that we've maybe not touched on that would initially come to mind?
Well, if you'd asked me that is it. Beating Celtic in the Driver Cup 1-0, getting a shutout and winning the cup. That was one of them. I saved a penalty in the cup final, the third one, and we thought, you get a lift. So we're going to go in and win this. So that was a big moment, but it just didn't happen. Those two probably two of the highlights. I mean, there's plenty, obviously, with a career that long, but that was amazing.
It's just, and it's just to kind of slightly touch on, and the only reason I kind of grabbed my phone is because I mentioned we were doing this tonight to a few family members of obviously kind of later in the kind of my generation, because it was my kind of dad and uncle, and straight away the first thing that came up was about the remembering of the saving of the Charlie Nicholas penalty and the 1-0 win.
Oh yeah.
And I think was it 1982, and then the 2 yards roughly rebound.
Yeah. Remember that? That's on YouTube. Somebody sent me that. yeah, I remember that. That was obviously beating 1-0 at home, and Charlie's penalty. Yeah, that was right enough. But again, you know, it was winning the cup. It was, but yeah, of course, that was a big moment. I mean, you love those days. And it was 40,000 there at that.
And it was quite funny because obviously when I put that out, and it did kind of, my uncle straight away kind of come back with that. And then I reached out to a few Hibs fans that I know. And that was when, as I kind of spoke earlier, I got a lot of the feedback in regards to throwing the ball, in regards to kind of cup wins. And the reason I bring this up now is because and I'm sure you can appreciate in football probably far better than I can. When kind of people's names come up within football, you know, you can get, as you know, kind of positive, negatives, and everything else in between. Anybody that I spoke to when I had mentioned yourself, Hibs fans of, you know, going to the games back then and remembering you as a player, every kind of bit of feedback I got was always very positive, and everybody was very, you know, telling me different moments and different things that they remembered. That then obviously made me even more excited to come on and do this with you today. So I would like to just say, Jim, I really appreciate you taking the time this evening to sit and talk to me. It's been an absolute pleasure. I mean, I'm pretty sure as well, because we've been on for a while now, we could have probably sat and spoke for another hour and not even noticed
it. Absolutely.
And not notice the time going by. But I really do appreciate your time this evening. Obviously, it would be great to kind of keep in touch and maybe look at something again further down the line.
No problem
because
at all.
I'm sure there's a lot of bases that we've not even touched on yet, which would be great to do. But look, Jim, thank you for your time. I'll definitely be keeping an eye out on your predictions.
All the 5 teams.
And no doubt we'll come back and discuss that in the future.
Okay.
All right, I appreciate your time, Jim. Take care. Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Thanks, mate. Bye.
Yes, bye.